My dad came into my bedroom to say goodbye. It was the night before
I may have to leave for
his
a while.
time in court. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. This
Stay
was
strong.
the first time I truly grasped I was losing him again. I'd only just got him back after the torture torn our family apart when he was sent to hell and lived in a bedsit. I was simply not ready for another stint without him. Overcome with emotion, I left him standing there in total despair.
Son, come back.
I ran out of control through the house, down the stairs, through the open back door into the garden. I was raging. I had tunnel vision. I just wanted to run, but never stop. Chasing shadows in the nighttime. Now alone in the field behind our home. Desperate and defiant, shouting to the heavens, "Don't take my dad away again." Tears streaming down my face as I cried into the void, surrounded by nothing but darkness. Realizing where I was suddenly gripped me. I hated the dark, suddenly alone in this field, so I quickly returned home. Often thereafter, I would wake up with night terrors, imagining waking up in my bed in that field in cold darkness, being chased back to my bedroom by bright-eyed entities. This moment had left a terrifying mental scar that I would relive often, when nightmares would hunt me down no sooner as I fell asleep.
Wake up! That prayer in that field that night was to be the last time I spoke to God until utterly broken in the prison cell. Some 10 years later, why had God allowed my dad to be taken from me again? Why did my heartfelt plea go unanswered? My childhood was steeped in the cult indoctrination, painting this picture of this vengeful God who was always watching, always judging, never listening. Looking back, I now realise it wasn't God who abandoned me. It was I who chose to turn away from him. On that fateful day, I decided to reject not just the oppressive teachings and indoctrination of the cult, but any notion of faith altogether. I was losing my religion, and with it, I lost the hope of any divine intervention. I mean, when the news came the next day that my dad wouldn't be coming home, something inside me died, shattered. Anger and resentment filled the void left behind by my shattered faith. In my heart, I began to believe that perhaps God's indifference to my suffering was proof actually that I really was destined for hell, sent there by the cult, because I was no longer part of it. And even as a child, I felt tainted by the world's evil, unclean and contaminated like they told me. I grew up convinced that God only listened to those still within the cult's grasp, and his refusal to answer my desperate prayer was just one more sign that he didn't want me, that he'd abandoned me, and I was on my way to hell. I mean, how twisted is that logic? Imagine standing at a crossroads when every choice seems to lead you further away from the person you once were. That was my life, spiraling into chaos as I let go of any semblance of conscience. I was consumed by pain, enforced cult abandonment. I'd lost every cousin, cult friend, and community, including my grandma, which hurt. But to lose my dad again was just too much, compounding this bizarre divorce from my wider family, friends and life. Everything I had known throughout the whole of my life stripped away from me in a moment. I would never live it again. I would never see those I loved again. And now I was on one path, a path to hell. So in my desperate search for relief, I believed the world owed me something, anything that could momentarily ease my suffering, distract me from thinking too hard about the severity of my upbringing and my present state of mind. So I began to rebel.
I've had enough.
Consequently, my lifestyle became anything goes. It was almost as if my conscience had departed. I didn't care. I was hurt, and that pain needed soothing. So whatever it was, if it made me feel better, even if it was funny at the expense of another, I'd do it. If I could steal it, I stole it. If it looked shiny and gold, then I wanted it. This the path I was now on. Is it any wonder my life would spiral out of control? Let me tell you this. This path I chose was not just reckless. It was a ticking time bomb. I had no idea that the same cult curse that had ensnared my father was now targeting me.
We're coming for you.
Reflecting on my journey, and it's almost surreal to think that I went from a devout Puritan leaving a cult, fearful of sin, to finding myself in the heart of Liverpool gangland, embroiled in a gunfight, and ultimately sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison for conspiracy to supply a Class A drug.
Send him down.
I mean, this was not just a detour. It was the beginning of a nightmare. The abandoning of any faith or God. I inadvertently made a pact with the devil, and I didn't know it. Believing light owed me and it would offer me everything my heart desired. But at what cost? I mean, here's where the story really begins. My dad being in jail also created a misplaced reputation. I mean, this was an affluent suburban school. Kids' dads just didn't go to jail. Did I thrive on it? Perhaps. But not enough for it to be okay, because I needed me dad. A father figure to take the strain, help the pain, because as a family, we were so lost and alone in this crowded world. As I grappled with this loneliness and this insecurity, I withdrew, masking the pain, sometimes in humour, that often cut deeper than I realised. For a time, I was nitroglycerine. No company at all, no one wanted to know me. I hoped that starting senior school would provide a fresh beginning, a chance to shed that identity of that old kid from a cult. Yet even Quarry Bank, where John Lennon once roamed, I remained invisible. In fact, desperate to evade discovery, hiding in plain sight, not letting anyone in too close. In all my time in senior school, I never had a best friend or a girlfriend. I was lonely in a crowded place. In senior school, I just existed. The summer of '84. That should have been a time for healing. Yet it felt like an endless countdown until my dad would return. I mean, when a family member goes to prison, time becomes your most precious commodity. Stolen away as you wait in limbo. Though I knew he would eventually come home, the distance felt insurmountable. I often found myself longing for the simplest of moments. I was drowning in the fact that he was gone. I mean, small mercies. At least I wasn't being spared that bang of that Firebird Viva. But now, I would have done anything to be seen in it with him. In fact, I would have let Dad follow me around the school in his brown suede Huggy Bear coat and his maroon suede Zephyr traps. Watching Top the Pops, I wished he could ruin my recording with his arse trumpet again. I was wondering, too, if my dad had access to a radio and the pop charts, hearing what I was at the same time, believing he was in some distant faraway dungeon, when he wasn't breaking rocks with shackles around his ankles, or chained to a wall, uncleansed, unshaven, a head like a burst mattress, starving. Was he thinking of me, like I was thinking of him? Most heartbreaking memories, which should have been one of our greatest triumphs,
well done, Liverpool,
was witnessing Liverpool lift the European Cup in Rome.
And a man who really dominated the middle of the field tonight
was made iconic by Bruce Grobbelaar's legendary wobbly legs. Yet I watched it from home, alone. I yearned for just one more moment when we were together and Chaz would swoop in with the red parasol from our garden, just like he did during our last celebration. That time when we were united, albeit in the cult, even if we couldn't publicly revel in our victory. This time, I was left to celebrate alone, because Dad was gone. The irony wasn't lost on me. It felt unbearably cruel. I couldn't even entertain the fantasy of him secretly visiting my mum, slipping across that landing for a quiet reunion.
I love you, son.
Bumping into me like the time when he was returning to his bedsit. Each time I woke up and made my way to the bathroom, I would stop where our paths had crossed that fateful night, closing my eyes and wishing just for a moment he was still there. Mum couldn't contain her excitement as she shared the news.
And I was like, really? Yes. Double yes.
On that sun-drenched day in May 1984, even the birds seemed to sing louder. I felt a spring in my step as we headed to prison to reunite as a family again, even if it was just for an hour. The anticipation made the journey feel endless. I expected a foreboding fortress of stone, but to my surprise, it resembled Colomendy, the sculpture, that destination in Wales. This was an open prison. Dad had his own key. How could this be? My frustration bubbled beneath the surface. He was locked behind bars. He could just walk right out of here and come home. When we arrived at the check-in destination,
Oh, that's what's your name, love? And who are you here to see?
and he quickly stopped me mum in her
Not his name, his number.
This screw corrected her. A number. In prison, your identity is reduced to a mere set of digits.
I am a free
The
man.
screw asked me mum.
Do you have any sharp instruments or drugs?
So nervous, I suspect began to check her bag just in case. Look, confusion on her face. Was she being arrested? I mean, this musicless dance around my mum's personal security was bizarre. But we left this chamber of accusation and we were let out into this prison garden. This wasn't a prison. This was more like a farm. It stunk.
Have poo.
The thought did cross my mind. Is molasses Mo doing so? We were guided into a community hall. The smell of pastel and manure, now overpowered by the stench of disinfectant. This room had not been modernised for some time, but it was well decorated and clean. There was no natural light. It was a bit like one of the local assembly halls from the cult. We were given a table number and sat at the one chosen for us. It was one of 20 similar round tables with a hanging light above it, surrounded by overexcited waiting families. What did catch my eye was the shop at the back, but it will come as no surprise. It wasn't selling souvenirs. Aniseed rock with HMP Kirkham lettered through the centre, or a slogan mug, HMP Kirkham, I wish you were here. But then a buzzer sounded, the door opened, and a line of men filed out resembling a football team if they were stepping onto the pitch, all dressed in jeans and striped shirts.
Dad, where's Dad?
Anxiously scanned the crowd until he found us. But who was this stranger standing before me?
Hi, son.
I recognised his voice instantly. The man I remember was a whiter shade of pale, back on him like the honey monster. This man now standing in front of me was tan like Mr. Bojangles and looking 10 years younger. He threw the lips on my mum, then he threw his arms around me and he kissed the top of my head. He'd been on strict diet of prison food, working physically as a gardener in the sun. He looked great, possibly the best I have ever seen him before or since. He did see
It's
Liverpool
well
in the
done,
European
Liverpool.
Cup. Following the pop charts, thinking of me doing the same. Our visits continued, each one filled with excitement, but nothing could compare to the day Pat was released from jail. That day etched in my memory, not just because he was finally coming home, but also because it was 1984. It was the Olympics. They were happening in the USA. And the TV would broadcast them throughout the night, which was a novelty. I was so filled with anticipation that I couldn't sleep, switching between waiting by the window for Dad and watching the Olympics.
At last, Dad was home.